Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass into the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
I'm Adam Luke. We've spent years helping others navigate the complexities of their minds and relationships.
In this podcast, we're flipping the script, and we're sharing our own unfiltered insights. No topic is off limits, and no issue too taboo. We're ready to tackle the tough stuff with honesty and empathy. Let's dive in.
Well, hello.
Well, hello. I'm back. I chopped my hair off for those of you watching on... Oh, and I pulled my headphone out. That's what I was trying not to do. Damn it.
Damn it, Talia.
We're already messing it up. Okay. It's the holidays are really stressful for me, okay?
We're supposed to be put together. Talked about this in the green room.
I am anything but put together today. At least I'm wearing pants, so that's a good thing.
Hey. Mm-hmm. I mean, small mercies, right? Especially since you are actually in the office. I
always wear pants in my office. They're sweatpants. It's pajamas. I'm in pajamas.
See, those are certain things that I do have to say I'm quite jealous of because you female therapists can put on like what do they call them? The
joggers.
Jeans or the
jeggings, yeah.
Jeggings, and you can make that work, right?
Male therapists
But
cannot.
if I show up in a set of Lululemons with like a collared shirt, people say I'm making therapy awkward. And it's just another frustrating double standard.
It is. Right? It reminds me of the bike shorts episode of Modern Family where Cam's wearing the bike shorts and Mitch is like, this is so inappropriate. And so he hires Claire basically to like tell him and let him down easy because Mitchell doesn't want to be on the hook for it. But there's like the cut scenes where you're seeing it. It's just like blocked out and you're like, oh, yeah, you couldn't show up wearing gray sweatpants as a therapist as a man. You could totally do that as a woman. And I have so many clients who are like, so cozy. Well, yes. Okay. Yeah. By the books, I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. Off the books, if you want to lose your license, go for it. I wouldn't recommend that again, though. Yeah, it is a double standard. But I do get a lot of compliments on how cozy I look. And I tell them, you're paying me for my mind, not my style. Okay? From my chin down, or actually my nose down, I guess, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just the brain that you're paying me for. Yeah. Just this.
Yeah. I love it.
I think I might get that on a shirt and put it on my merch site. You're just paying me for my mind.
You're just paying me for my brain. And it'd just be like a brain all cozy under a blanket.
Yeah.
Like that's where I am.
Tea. Yeah.
Like mood should be just you in blankets with eyeballs. Like that's a mood in of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's prime for this holiday season episode. Ho ho holy hell. We've been leading this one in for at least since the Thanksgiving episode, and you said this is right for the picking because a lot of your clients this week have talked about it. So I'm gonna
the pressure is building. I mean, Christmas is here, right? So Thanksgiving was round one. Now it's ding 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 round two, right? True. So it's funny. I say that, and there are people that are like, well, they're well adjusted, they have good families. They're like, that's terrible, and it's like, well, yeah, you got to pay attention to. There's probably a large portion of people out there that the holidays are actually a spot of anxiety. You don't know how other people are going to act. You're not sure what to expect. And so what I hope to be different about with this episode is moving into like, what is the Christmas that you want? Right? We've already given you a lot of strategies to use in the Thanksgiving episode, but we didn't get to where I like to start, which is, hey, paint me a picture. Like what is a Christmas that you want to have? Because then we can walk backwards from there. It's so much we're in this reactionary state of, well, whatever happens, how am I going to navigate that?
Right.
And I think that that's where we set ourselves up for failure, because there's not a strategy about having a positive experience. There's a strategy on how I'm going to navigate difficulty.
Yeah, and I think if we're being honest with ourselves of what we really want it to look like, and we look back at the last few years, not pandemic related, but like just how we conducted ourselves related, that it probably wasn't congruent. What I actually want Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever, like my holiday season to look like, might not actually have come true because of familial pressure, obligation, guilt, which again, we covered strategies for how to navigate those in the Thanksgiving episode and our previous episodes too, about like triangulation and in-laws, etc. But with the holiday season, I've noticed as an adult that there's a lot of joy that leaves because like the reality of adulthood sets in and you're like, oh, the Christmas spirit was whichever family member that was making sure to decorate or light the scented candle or ask people what they wanted for the white elf. Like there's always the one or two like glue family members
Oh yeah.
in the family that try to keep the holiday spirit alive. And sometimes we don't realize that till we're adults or till we're like getting the throne passed or the torch passed to us to sit in the throne, that's like our job now. And I know you and I are both, new-ish, but new parents relatively.
Yep.
We have kids under 5, so kids under 3 even. And that
kids under 2.
Right, kids under 2, let's just round down, right? It's an I've noticed that because I was like doing the tree and the garland and the stockings and even like cutting up her pears this morning for her to eat breakfast. I'm like, oh, this is me. Like, it's my job now. Like, no one's coming to cut up my pears. Like, I'm cutting up somebody else's pears. And that is the feeling around the holiday season is, oh, this is my job now to create that Christmas spirit. Even if it's not for the whole family, it is your job to create it for yourself. How can you microdose that joy that you felt growing up where you actually looked forward? We looked forward to Christmas all year as kids. What's on your list?
Sure.
What's this? And like as soon as school
barely
started.
Sleep.
Right? One of my favorite stories, okay, before I pass the mic back to you, one of my favorite stories, I dated this guy, such a sweet guy. His family, he loved Christmas, still does. He's obsessed with it. Loves Christmas, and his mom was telling me this story and his dad was a fireman, so they couldn't open gifts before the dad got home. That was their rule. But he would always sneak out because he woke up before, and he goes to the end of the hall and he sees that the tree had been decked out in the gifts, and he's like shaking, lost it. And the mom's like, yes, but you have to wait. Like, don't wake up your sister. He's just like combust because he's staring at the tree with the gifts. And if you know him, it's like one of the best visuals because he's this huge dude, but you imagine like a little kid huge, just can't control, like he got electrocuted basically by the joy. And like that's the vibe that I want clients to have to look forward to for Christmas. I want you to be shaking with joy.
Absolutely. Now, how do we make that realistic, right?
That's a good question. Yeah. I'll let you get us started as I noodle on some. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
You're noodling. I like it marinating.
Yes.
So I guess the question I have is like, why in Western culture do we not actually treat like Christmas Day or Christmas dinner with like a reverence of actually wanting to protect the experience instead of just having a experience? Because like what's interesting is it depends on what families you're a part of, but I think a lot of us navigate the whole like 2 or more multiple Christmases. Like we have to hit like whether our family's split up or whatever has happened. And so then the day is largely spent like in a car headed to one place. You're there
that
for
movie,
an hour
4
and a half.
Christmases. They do such a good job of making that visualization or that what a lot of families live out a reality in the movie. Yeah.
And it's interesting from my perspective of like, why do we ask families to be on the road to go do these things in that way? And I think that has to come back to, there's a lot of times people are actually, the reason why you can't stand Christmas is you can't stand the way you have done Christmas for the last 5 or 10 years.
Correct. Yeah.
So it actually has nothing to do with the holiday. It's the fact that it's such an impossible task, or it's one in which you actually like strip away your own humanity. And then, I wouldn't want to do it either.
Yeah. I realized that with my brother. I don't even know how many years ago this was. 2019, 2020, a long time ago. And it was Easter. It wasn't Christmas, but it was Easter, which for Catholics, my mom's very Catholic, is just as big, if not bigger, of a holiday. And
it's Super Bowl of Catholic.
Oh yeah. And my brother and I would always sit in the back seat driving as kids mostly. And then my dad would drive and be screaming his head off, road rage, the amount of expletives. And my mom would like paint her nails in the front seat. So you're like getting this whiff of nail teaks while she's calling all the relatives. And all of us are like, no, we don't want it. Like we would hate, like you're saying, you dread that part of the holiday, but then it eventually eclipsed the whole holiday because that set the tone. My dad's road rage, that set the tone for how we would walk into our family's house. And we're not the type of family that, well, my mom likes to think that we are, but we're not the type of family that was like putting on this fake face. Like we would be finishing our argument as we were walking in the front door to our aunt and uncle's house. And they're much more meek than like we're all Italian, but like they're much less abrasive than this side of the family. Definitely a lot less expletives. They're a lot more Christian. So it was just so funny that was like the template that was set, and we would always dread that drive out to wherever they lived. And now at that Easter, my brother and I looked at each other and like, let's drive separately, because I also had something else to go. I think it was 2019 because the world was still up. I had like something else to go to. And we both drove there, and it was so peaceful. We just got to chat, listen to music. There was nothing we didn't like about it, and we got to leave whenever we wanted. We didn't feel forced. And on the drive home, because we both had our cars at our parents' house, and I was like, that was the best thing ever. We should do that for every holiday. And that's what we've done pretty much since, is drive separately, because it's so much more peaceful, and it protects that Christmas spirit energy so that you show up and you're not already stressed. That already happened on Thanksgiving too. Everybody was doing fine, and we all met at my parents' house to leave to go to our family friend's house. And within literally 30 minutes, my brother's like, well, I want to go to the store and get this. My dad's like, why are we yelling at each other? Like, why? It was just because it was this old script that all of us were falling into. And my mom's like, I wasn't even stressed before you got here. And I was like, I was having a great day. Like, all of us, again, just screaming at each other for literally no reason other than the fact that our brains were probably like, wait, it's a big holiday. You guys should probably feel tense. So I wanted,
here's the template. Put it on the overhead.
Yeah, right? Boop, software, engage. Like, as you're listening to this, if that happens to you and your family, like, be incredibly mindful that might be this operating software that needs an update, that you can actually still look forward to the holidays, and not spending too much time or feeling obligated to spend too much time allows you to protect your energy so you can be the jovial, enjoyable person and not have to spend so much time on the road. I always thought that was ridiculous also, and the amount of traffic. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, a strategy that I feel like I haven't seen it backfire in utilizing it with any of my clients in this regard is the whole like go, no go thought process, which is like, why are we here? So like, hey, we want to spend time with grandma and grandpa. We're cherishing the holidays that we still have with them. We're seeing people that are in from other states or out of town or whatever it is. We're enjoying it. But then what are our no-goes? Like, because we all also have those experiences where it's like, what aunt stays a little too long in the punch bowl, and then all of a sudden shit goes sideways, right? The eggnog starts kicking in. Like, when will we actually give ourselves permission to like, this is no longer filling our cup? Like, because I've also sat down with a lot of people who have talked about like I feel like I have to referee. I end up having to be there because I don't know what's going to happen. Like, my mom's either going to start crying, or my sister's going to cry, and in IFS work, we always talk about these people take on the role of the managers, right? Like, they start managing the parts that are having incongruencies. These parts just happen to be living people in the house, in the living room. And so I think that it's important, because if you can identify this with like your significant other, you say, okay, like, what are we going to enjoy? How's it going to be? Like, I can't wait for the kids to open their presents and be around their cousins and have this. If we can recognize that isn't happening, then is there actually a reason for us to stay? Like, servitude, sacrifice, obligation should not be a part of the reason why you're having the Christmas experience with the people you're sharing it with.
You're just like white knuckling it, gritting teeth the whole time, and as soon as you leave, you're like, oh, that was. You don't want to leave feeling. There's times where you leave feeling relieved. Like, I get over like the sensory stuff, and my ex's family is a ceiling light family. I'm a floor lamp girly myself. Already knew that wasn't going to work. What was I thinking? They were very nice about it, though. They were very like, let's unscrew one of the light bulbs. Like, they would modify when I would come over, and because I would ask for it. But everybody was like, oh, you know, you always show up in such a great mood. And by the end of the night, I was just so spent, because it was so many people, so much light, so much noise. Like, my nervous system had just had too much.
Every stimulation is overstimulated.
Right. It was just like too much. And I would share that with my ex and his mom, and they would like modify the lighting and stuff. So then that got a little bit better. But you don't want to leave feeling so depleted that you have like no energy left for yourself. And I would need like a day or two after that just to decompress. And they were the kind of family, which is phenomenal, that they're like, then let's get together the next day and breakfast and games and this. And I'm like, I'm out. Like, my nervous system is shot.
Flag.
Yes. If I had known that was what we were going to do, I wouldn't have stayed as long on whatever the day was, because I need extra in my gas tank, right? Like, if I know I'm going on a long road trip metaphorically the next day, I'm not going to go to bed that night with an empty tank
yourself,
and be like,
right?
yeah, I'm going to maybe drive one stint and one stint. And so being around that kind of family where they thrive on that, and maybe they don't, like, maybe secretly they need some rest afterwards, was just much different. And it's not to say that my family isn't draining in a different direction with some of like the conflict and the sass back and forth, but that's what I'm familiar with. If I were familiar with growing up in a big, loud, bright house, that would be my template, and then going anywhere else would not be my template. It just wasn't that way. So I think for those of you listening, knowing what your template is and knowing what your what type of family system you come from, if you're navigating this with your significant other and their family, so your in-laws, knowing that ahead of time and having conversations ahead of time allows you then to give your partner like the look or the hand squeeze, or at least be checking in throughout the evening. How is this going for you? Do you need to take a break? And there's nothing wrong truly with maintaining your own peace. And that was what the great part about last year was when I was breastfeeding, is when I got too overwhelmed. I already didn't want to go to Christmas because my daughter was only like a month old, but I was like, I felt like I had to. So to speak to your point of like obligation, but I would go in the other room for numerous times to breastfeed, but also to just get a break from all like the light, sounds, and noise. So I could actually make it a little longer, because that was me like filling up my gas tank. So you don't have to be breastfeeding to do that, but you could stay like, I just need to excuse myself, go lay down for a little bit, take a 15-20 minute nap, recharge, and then come back out and socialize, or take a break, go take a walk. Like, pace yourself if you do actually enjoy the holidays, but you just get overstimulated easily.
Well, like one strategy that my wife has always employed has been like that after meal walk. Like, I need to get out of the the noise. Like, and it was interesting because at first, sometimes my family would be like, "Oh, well, we'll go with you," and it's like that's not the point of the walk, right? Like, and this isn't me. So, like, it's funny how we get built into like all these passive aggressive behaviors. We're like, "Oh, if she's going on a walk, she's actually telling us that she wants us to go on a walk," and it's like,
I need some fresh air to myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, like, take the walk, or take the pre-dinner walk, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Like, yeah,
I mean, that's so funny.
I was laughing with a client earlier today where client was like, I don't see a way to get through this family Christmas without a CBD gummy. And I was like, okay. I was like, I think what you're really telling me is that you don't see a way of getting through it because you aren't going to change anything, right? Like, so we could just muscle through with a CBD gummy, or you could, like, I don't know, change things about this.
And not refereeing, or like you were saying earlier, like playing that role. That's not changing it. It's like, well, I manage this person's emotions, or I manage this person's expectations, or I manage this person's codependency. That's still playing that familiar role, familial role, which doesn't break the cycle. And again, if you truly, I'll just be real with people. If you see these people once a year and you have to muscle through it, do what you got to do. Okay, I'm not going to force every client to have this like come to Jesus moment and be transcending whatever they need to, but there is still this feeling of how do I care for myself and also enjoy the holiday season. And it's not like, realistically, when I used to work with this personal trainer, he's like, the holidays, at least in fall, not counting Halloween, he's like, the holidays are 3 days, which is true. But so many people are like, it's the holidays caught up to me. It's like, you were overeating for many weeks. Like, literally just the holidays, if you binged for 3 days, that wouldn't do you in the way that you think. It's because it's this like climate of the whole season. It's not just the weather, so to speak, on those specific days. And that's what you have to be mindful of. Also, if you're noticing your nervous system kind of cranking up and it's a tougher time, or there's a more stressful or tense time around the whole holiday season, all of these things that we're talking about still apply, especially on the actual day, but days leading up to it and afterwards, you're still going to have to do self-care and aftercare, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. So I think what you just highlighted there, if you are going, wait a second, I rarely ever see these people, and I'm still going to have to muster through it. Like, I don't know, as a therapist, and I know this rubs people the wrong way, but I sit there and go, then why are you friggin' doing it? Like if you really...
I have to, because it's an obligation.
Yeah, is it though? Like, because at some point, like, I think no one talks about this side, but like there are black sheep in the family, and at some point the sheep start sticking around the herd on their own. Like, if you are the one that's pursued like your own healthy relationships, understanding boundary work, living your best life, like, and then you have to go back to something that feels toxic, oppressive, like something that doesn't actually bring you any joy, then we need to have, like, why? Because what ends up happening is people use your presence as permission. You go, oh, well, they're here, so then somehow they're actually giving me permission for how I behave. Like, this is actually where it is a part of that boundary work for you to actually verbalize what type of experiences you want for people. Like, I'll never forget, I had to do it with my own family at one point in time, was saying, hey, if we're going to do Easter a certain way, this is what Easter needs to look like. And it wasn't that I was prescribing things that were unrealistic. I was like, I just want to enjoy our time together. Like, we need to focus on that. If we can't focus on that, and it's going to divulge into politics or all these other things, and our emotions are going to get all over the place, and I'm not really interested in participating in that, because I don't want Easter to feel like a punching bag. And were people offended? People were absolutely offended. People who haven't talked to me since then. But that's a takeaway in of itself, is that if I say, hey, for me to have fun and enjoy this, I don't want to feel attacked, and you tell me, well, screw you, I'm not going to be around you. Like, oh, okay. All right. So you're not willing to have a relationship with me unless I sacrifice to make that relationship happen.
And it sounds like how you set the boundary was saying, let me know if this is actually how it was, because it sounds like it, that it was like, hey, here's what I'm hoping for out of it, or here's how I will conduct myself, or if this topic comes up, here's how I will treat myself, or I might leave, rather than maybe wording it as like, everybody has to follow this no politics rule. Like, that's not a boundary. For those of you listening, that's like, how did he do it? That would not be a boundary. That would be more like an ultimatum, which some families do that. I'm not saying that I advocate for that. Some families do it that way, and that's why you're asking, like, well, is it really an obligation? Yeah, because some people are issued an ultimatum of like, sometimes it's silent though, like, this is how it's going to be or else, and you were vocal and set the boundary of, hey, this is what I'm looking forward to this Easter. And it's not in a selfish way of I, me, mine. I'm highlighting the boundary is, here's what I'm wanting, here's what I'm not willing to put up with, here's what I'm going to conduct myself, just so everybody is, as my dad says, put on notice. They can respond as they will in kind. But you're not, it doesn't sound like you were trying to go in and manage their experience. You were simply sharing how you wanted yours to be.
Yeah, I mean, and I had to point back to what had happened in the previous holiday experience of like, let's not try to hide this. This is what happened. I mean, it got really awkward. Everyone sort of either left, or there wasn't really much talking afterwards. And, you know, that's not something that I want my kid to grow up in. That's not something that I want to, you know, experience myself. It wasn't enjoyable for me and my wife. Like, so yeah, it was also, I was putting those things out there. And a lot of times it's, you're saying these things for yourself and not for others, which is, I'm going to give myself permission to leave. Like, hey, we can't promise that we're going to be there all day. Well, you used to be here for 6-7 hours. Yeah, but I'm married now. I have like different things that are going on in my life.
Different priorities.
Kids. Yeah. Like, and so you get to actually use them for the valuable excuses they are, of like,
so true.
Yeah, me bringing 3 kids over to your house, which your house is not kid proof.
That
you
too,
haven't done it. Like, that's fine. I don't want you to feel like you have to make your house perfect for us to come over.
Sure.
But know that, like, once they're done playing in the backyard, once they're done, like, we're going to get up and we're going to go.
Yeah, it's not like the same as when we could stay for hours. It's also like, well, I was driving with another family member, and it was whoever was driving when their internal clock said it was time to go, despite sometimes the pleas of other people who were like, please, we want to go. It didn't matter, because whoever was having the conversation, once that conversation ended, then it was time for that family to leave. The older we get, the more autonomy that we have and that we feel, then we're able to advocate for ourselves differently. That's why, you know, like I mentioned earlier, my brother and I driving either together separately from our parents or separately from, you know, everyone works better. I feel so much less pressure, because in the back of my mind I go, I can leave whenever I want. I'm not stuck here. I'm not forced to be here, which once you start feeling that creep in, if somebody else does drive you, you know what that feels like at a party when somebody else is the DD or whatever else, or you're the DD and you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired, I want to leave. And then drunk Becky comes over and she's like, we're going to take shots and stay out till 2 a.m. And you're like, fuck this. No, we're not. Like, I'm going to call you an Uber. I know I said I would DD for you, but I'm tired. I'm going to call you an Uber.
Drunk Becky is getting a Dewey, is what she's getting. I'm done. I'm out.
I'm not doing this. And knowing when knowing when you're reaching the limit or getting close to the I'm done, I can't do this anymore before you hit that wall, that is a skill that I still try to fine tune up until this day. And it's a necessary skill to preserve the relationships that you actually want to preserve. So, like in my family, I want to have a relationship with my mom and my dad. It's going to look different, and it does, than when I was growing up,
Absolutely.
of course. And now I hit my internal limit. My dad is a lot more, I think the word probably understanding, like he gets it on a different level than my mom does, at least from how he's like interacted with me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm basing it off of. That he understands I'm up at 5:30 or 6 with the dog and the baby. It's just me. I'm going until whenever they go to bed around 7 or 8 at night. That's a long time to be awake doing all of that, managing myself. I have help from like the nanny or from
Yeah.
them, but it's not the same as like having a partner doing it with you necessarily, and that's exhausting. And then my mom is doesn't have the same circadian clock, so she wants to chat and show me all this stuff in the evening when she gets home, and I'm dead to the world, and it's not the right time. I'm actually interested in what she has to say,
Oh, for
probably,
sure.
but it's not the right time. And there's so many times where she took it as like a personal affront that I didn't want to hear what she had to say, and my dad was seeing it happen, and I would intervene, but I was a bitch because I was so tired. And he's like, I wish you guys would stop arguing. And I pulled him aside one day. I said, then this is what would help. The next time you see that happen and you see me
Yeah.
try to advocate for myself, you see it clear as day. Why don't you say something? And I wasn't trying to enlist or triangulate. I was verbally
No,
advocating, like, then you can explain it differently, maybe, because she at
for
that point
sure.
doesn't want to hear it from me. And he was able to. And now it's a lot more pleasant. And she knows if there's something she needs to show me or address, that it's like
Yeah.
right when she gets home, whatever, from church at like 4:30 or 5, not at 7 when I'm already hit my wall. I already hit my sensory limit. The kid is crying, the dog's trying to like that is not the
I'm
time for me to
done.
be present. I'm out. I would just shut the door, let me turn to my Christmas music and drive the fuck home. And that's again knowing your own internal limit before
yes.
you get to that, and letting, like you're saying, letting people know ahead of time, hey, we can't stay all day. We have other obligations and we're on our child's time clock now. They're really great built-in excuses, like you were saying. And they don't even have to have a nap time. Sometimes I want the nap. I need a nap. It's my nap time.
Hey there, listeners. Are you tired of settling for less than you deserve in your relationships? Do you ever feel like you're not being seen, heard, or valued the way that you want? Or maybe you've been wondering why you keep attracting the same kinds of people into your life, or why certain patterns seem to repeat themselves in your relationships. The answer might be deeper than you think, and you can find it in my new course. Rewire Your Relationships is a transformative course designed to help you stop settling for less than you deserve and start embodying your most confident, assertive, and authentic self in your relationships. You'll explore how your early experiences and parental influences have shaped your views on love, dating, and self-worth. This isn't just about tips and tricks for dating. It's about understanding the core beliefs that drive your relationships that you attract. You'll learn how to break free from those old patterns and start creating the kind of connections that truly reflect who you are. Imagine stepping into a relationship with clarity and confidence, knowing you're attracting people who value and respect you for who you really are, your deeply authentic self. The Rewire Your Relationship course gives you the tools to rewrite your relationship story, one where you're no longer settling, but thriving. Visit taliabombola.com/rewire-your-relationships or check the link in the show notes for more.
You know, some of our families, it's like, hey, we're going to have dinner at 1, which means we're actually going to have dinner at 9, right? Like, it's never when we say it's going to be. And I know I threw a crazy number out there, but it just happens. Like, oh, it's going to be a 1, it's going to be a 4, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the other side where it's like, when we tell you it's going to be 1, it's going to be plated at 12:55 and cooling on the table by 1.
Yes.
And so, like, how do you navigate that family, right? Because it's like, oh, there's not really any room for error. All of a sudden, oh, there's traffic, and there's always traffic. There's always some sort of hiccup, right? And I want to also encourage you, allow that to be a part of that permission you give yourself. When people say, hey, we're going to have people over at 2. Okay, what time do you think the bird's going to hit the table? What time do you think dinner's actually going to be? Oh, probably 4 or 5. Okay, well, we'll get over there when we can as a family. Like, because I don't want to show up and my whole family looks like they've been through 12 rounds of a boxing match. Because, like you said, we fought in the car, we fought getting here, we're all pent up, and now we're just bringing our emotional garbage into your house. How about we'll get there when we get there?
Yeah.
But I remember having experiences with my family where it's like, oh, hey, where are you guys? And it's like, well, we said we're going to be over like when we're going to, oh, but we're trying to eat. We'll wait for you. Don't wait for me.
Yes, do not wait.
Don't wait.
Save
Don't
me a
wait for
plate
me.
if you can, but do not wait and have everybody be holding up on that account.
Like, and that's what it got to a spot where it's like, okay, we have to find a different way to do this because I want to enjoy my holiday at the same time. I don't want to feel rushed, and you'll hear that like, oh, we want to do breakfast this year, but maybe Christmas morning is something that's really important in your house. And, hey, I don't want to rush that. I don't want to truncate that experience. And it's funny. My wife's side of the family, they have like a whole Christmas morning experience where you make very certain blueberry muffins, and there is a whole person is designated the elf of the eve or the morning, and you give everyone their Christmas gifts, and we open them in an order so everyone can see them. And I love it. That's their tradition. But they're also steadfast that they're not going to let like Christmas creep happen where all of a sudden we can't enjoy that because, oh, we have to be over it somewhere at a certain time. And that's where it also comes down to, guess what? It's okay if it doesn't work out.
No.
It's okay if, hey, you know what? We aren't going to be able to make it over there at that time. There's something that's important to us. But people can't handle that idea. Like, well, oh no, you have to make it work.
I think much like the evolutionary principle that once we, especially as women, have some semblance of a plan or structure, we can kind of take that exhale of like, if somebody were to ask us on a date and they're like, yeah, let's go out this weekend, I have some semblance of when it's happening, but it's still too nebulous. That lands differently than if somebody were like, I would like to take you out this Friday at 6:00 to whatever restaurant in Fashion Island. Far more semblance of a plan. So my brain then goes, okay, that's a plan. We're working towards that. Sometimes, though, there is too much adherence to it. And what if the restaurant's closed for repairs? What if there's actually this other new restaurant that I mentioned I want to go to and they can get us in at 5:30 on Friday? My options are freak out that it's not the original 6:00 or be comfortable that there was a plan and be open to the fact that it can be changed and modified, because having too much adherence to that can actually make us dumb. Like we get too much into this false sense of security of like, but it was the 6:00 thing. And again, women are far more likely to have that happen because of the way that we view time and like the way that we view structure. But having that adaptation of, this is our general plan, but we know that at a moment's notice, for whatever the reason, traffic, the nap time, how we slept the night before, I think parenthood really teaches us a lot about like that flexibility of like, here's what would be nice if it happened today, but then realistically, what is actually going to be the timing of things? Don't get so stuck on, but we said we were going to leave at 11:30. Okay, but what if we're having a good time here? And like we did in the last or 2 episodes ago, send them a text and say, hey, things are really fun here, and we want to make sure that we are honoring the commitment that we've made to be here. Is it okay? Or not even asking for permission, like, hey, we're going to be 30 minutes past when we said we would. Or is it okay that we're doing that if there's like food on the table or something? Most of the time people are okay as long as you ask and give a heads up. More people are upset if you treat it like an afterthought, where it's like, oh yeah, sorry, we were going to text you earlier and you show up like 2 hours late. I don't mind it as much if it changes, if there's notice. So I think that's kind of the compromise, is like, it's okay that things can change. You don't need to be so rigid and adherent to a plan that you end up, honoring it, but at the cost of dishonoring yourself or your own family values. Be flexible, have some semblance of a plan and commitment, but be flexible that it might not happen the way that you want for a multitude of reasons on this holiday.
Yeah. Because I mean, you and I are kind of different cases because we have young kids right now, and like so much is around nap schedules. But like that's also something that we've had to navigate, my wife and I, where it's like, hey, we have a pack and play. We have this like dark cube thing that like shade, right? So and at times Lorelai can sleep in that thing and she's happy and it's all fine and dandy. Other times she will not sleep in that thing. I have no control over it, right?
Correct.
But what's interesting, and this is where the holy hell side also bleeds into the regular life of like, hey, we also have family birthdays and there's graduations and there's all sorts of things that happen. but you have to allow yourself to also say, hey, depending on what the day throws at us, we'll see how we participate, right?
Yes.
Like, we went to a wedding a couple months ago, and we were just really upfront with the people because we love them. We wanted to celebrate them. We just said, hey, we think we can get her through the ceremony. We think we could probably get her about 90 minutes into the reception, but we just want to let you know, if you see us leaving, we would have wanted to be here longer, but we also just traveled 550 miles to be here. I got a kid in crisis. There's just things we're gonna have to take care of. And this is what's interesting is, like, bride and groom and family, amazing, right? Like, oh, absolutely, do what you need best, right? But then there was still, like, when we were there, we had other people who, again, we don't give a shit about your opinion.
I'm not
but they
there
were,
for them.
oh, you just have to make it work. Like, you could stay if you wanted. I'll never forget this chick I didn't even know was like, you could stay if you wanted. And it was like,
are you familiar with
not,
children?
Like, that's but see, this is a problem. How much of our lives do we actually play to that person?
True.
That you get the one person who makes the objection, who doesn't have any kids or any investment or any worry in this situation. And they get to speak into your life. Where there was one time, this happened the first Christmas that she was around. We thought, okay, we'll try to have Lorelai go to sleep at our family's house. And guess what? Lorelai wasn't having it. And so after about 90 minutes of a cry fest, and my wife going in and out, I just called an audible. Hey, we would love to be here, but I have a wife that's now completely overstimulated. I have a kid that just wants to go to sleep but doesn't know how. And we don't need to be here.
No.
Like we hit what we needed to hit. We love you to death, and we're gonna leave. And that's my encouragement that I want you to hear, is that, like, if it's not going well for you, it's not going well for anyone.
Yes. And other people can sense that tension. And like you're saying, some respond to that tension of and it's like with when children cry because they're overstimulated, then we get overstimulated. A lot of parenting is basically managing your own emotions, not trying to control your child. And if they're overstimulated and we need to take a deep breath, everyone else feels that. But some are like, it's like when you tell an angry person to calm down, they're like, well, you could stay if you want, or why don't you try this archaic 30-plus-year-old solution? It's like, no, I'm not going to give them whiskey. Thank you. Like, I'm not that desperate that they need to sleep. Like, I'm a creature of comfort, or whatever. Yeah, creature of comfort. I like that habit. Like, I don't like sleeping in strange places. I still need, like, my eye mask, my sound machine, my my pillow under my legs. Like, I know what that's like from growing up and to an adulthood. Of course it matters for a kid who thrives off of structure and routine. Sometimes, like you said, they call their own audible and you're like, oh my gosh, they're sleeping through this. Like, I went to a graduation earlier this year, and what I thought would be way too loud, it was like at UCLA Poly Pavilion, the bass, I was like, oh my God, she's going to wake up. She slept through the whole thing. It pissed me off more than it pissed her off, or like overstimulated me more than her, and she was fine. And then at night, I was already at my limit and she was starting to get to her limit. Bedtime is the only thing I've ever been like a stickler on. Naps, I'd like her to have more, but I'm not like, we have to have her in the dark room, because she wasn't like that. I wasn't going to force her to be like that, but that's how we have to care for ourselves. And other people around that are either going to be super understanding of, do what you have to do, like leave early, go to the other room, take as long as you need. But then the other people who are so based on tradition are like, well, of course, when my kid was, I don't actually give a shit what your kid did. I've met your kid. I don't even like your work. Okay. So why would I take your parenting advice?
The best is, where are your kids? Well, I never see them now. Oh, I wonder what that is.
Yeah, right. Well, we had something where they cut me off. I guess it's called estrangement. It's like, so why, especially then, would I take your parenting advice if I have seen their work and I've seen your work, it's not for me, and you don't even have a close relationship with them? I'm definitely not going to take the feedback you're giving me unsolicited, mind you. Yeah, no, that's the holy hell part of it. And being clear, that was one of the biggest sticking points with my ex and I, was being clear that, like, I had certain boundaries, rules, and expectations around how I did or didn't want holidays to go, or certain schedules or what have you to go. And they were far more, because there was 6 kids. They had to go with the flow. There was no special orders. There was no. So survival. I totally empathize, right? I empathize with where that mentality comes from. I didn't come from that. I came from a family of 2. and I have one child, and I'm an adult with my own means and my own abilities to set boundaries. I've had a lot of therapy. It just didn't mesh well. And so there were times where I would text ahead of time, and there were a lot of times I felt like I was the only one who had my back. But now I don't mind that as much around the holidays because I don't have to spend time with them, and it's the pressure's off, that it's like pleasant enough that if I wanted to, like on Thanksgiving when I dropped her off, I actually sat and had a piece of French toast before I left because there was no tension, because I wasn't going to be forced to stay the whole day, and I wasn't going to need to be there to micromanage what I thought should be happening with parenting, because he had her for the overnight. If she's a nightmare at night, that's on you, buddy. That's not my problem. Like, it felt so much more freeing to be like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna regulate myself. I'm gonna have my breakfast, and then I'm gonna go be on my merry way and clean out the storage unit and decorate and do whatever I wanted to do. It was very fulfilling rather than feeling that stress of, well, it's Thanksgiving and we have to do this. I didn't end up getting to my parents till like 4 o'clock, and it was great because I didn't have to see them for that long. And then I left our family friend's house with Pancake, my dog, at 9 o'clock. They stayed till 12:30. Your girl cannot make it up that late anymore, right? That's not on me. Yeah.
I love that meme that's like making its way around TikTok of it says me showing Generation Z how I can stay up, and it's the gladiator. It's Russell Crowe like passing out at the end of the movie at 10 o'clock. And so it's like, yep, that's exactly what it is. And so, I mean, right here, what has been the crux of our conversation, which is you have power even in moments where you're willing to give your power away. Like, so you have the ability to say, I would like this Christmas to happen. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm trying to check off the list, because there are the other aspects of like, why the hell are we still here? If we have eaten, the cake's been cut, the presents have been open, why are we here? And again, this isn't a selfishness. If you're having good conversations, good fellowship, enjoy it.
Yeah.
But if you're saying, well, I just don't want to be the first one who leaves, like,
oh, I'll be the first one to leave all the time. Yeah. It's my favorite.
See, that's the thing.
Do.
Therapists never have that problem.
Never.
We're like, well, first of all, it's so funny because, as my wife says, I live my life 50 minutes at a time.
Same. I was just going to say, my internal clock is tuned for every 50 minutes. 50 so minutes. I can get to 50, and then the next 50, I'm like, oh, that's a 3-hour session. Wow, this is a long time.
Well, yeah, you start to feel resentful. You're like, oh, I could double billed for this. Like, no. Like, yeah, absolutely. At the beginning of Christmases, we should just be taking pictures of insurance cards and then just billing for one hell of a group session. It's an intensive $1,800 or whatever it is.
Right off, whatever.
This is the reality of it, is like, there's not, I do not have a problem because I'm also comfortable in my boundaries and in my self-worth of like, hey, I would rather be at home. And I think that a healthy relationship around me would rather me be where I want to be. Than for me to be trying to fill their cup.
Yeah, that's one of, I don't think it was his quote. I've mentioned it before, but James Sexton, the divorce lawyer, in one of the podcasts he was interviewed on, this nugget of wisdom fell out of his mouth, that tradition is peer pressure from dead people.
Yeah.
Which it is, especially around the holidays. And I'm not saying to dishonor or not give reverence to traditions that feel good, that feel congruent, that actually bring the family closer together. But there are certain traditions that are still upheld by many families, and it's out of reverence, I understand. And they end up driving more conflict and driving families further apart for the sake of, well, at least we did it. And pictures, I don't know about your family, pictures are a huge part at my family gatherings. I did appreciate that about my ex's, my whatever ex-father-in-law, whatever, my ex's dad, that he would be kind of like, not creepy, but like just take them in vivo, where like what do they call them,
spontaneously.
Thank you. Yeah, whatever they're like auto capture, like it's for the moment, where it wasn't like posed. Sometimes you'd see him and he'd kind of just motion to you to get together, and you would, but it wouldn't be this whole rigmarole of like, don't change out of your church outfits and let's go outside in this. And truly, every time I hear that come out of my mom's mouth I'm like, my skin crawls, because I'm like, oh, like I was just in the middle of doing something, or I was just relaxed or whatever. Like when it feels like an interruption or a burden to go do the tradition, that's where having that boundary is of, I know you're going to want pictures. I understand. And I'm not saying I don't want photos. Like, I think it's cool to memorialize events. Yeah. Can we do it at a time that works best for all of us? Can we do it before we leave for church? Because then once we come home, we can just hang out? Or can we do it before we have dinner rather than after, when all of us just want to go curl up on the couch in our heating blankets and zone out to TV? My mind isn't there anymore. I'm also not going to look as good in pictures because I've just eaten like a football team size meal because I'm so hungry. Like there's
the
time and a place,
sweats,
right?
The carb shakes.
Yeah. Or like the prayers. I can't do it. And so I've asked if we can just pray after the meal, because I get this from my dad and it's not as bad since I've dialed in my hormones, but like the hanger, the last thing you want to do is get between me and that hot plate of food that I just served myself by listing in chronological order everything that you're grateful to Jesus for. I'm going to start eating. At a certain point, my internal clock goes 15 seconds. I'm not waiting. And of course, I get the stares and I'm like, if you don't want me to interrupt, then we're going to pray after the meal. So we've reached like a nice compromise that not every tradition has to be upheld. And I get it. Again, there's reverence to our previous generations. But sometimes it's like, have I ever met this person that we're doing this tradition for? Like, does this mean anything to me? No, it does not. So you have to ask yourself, why would you comply with it?
Well, better yet, when do you start your own traditions? Because like
was something. Okay, that's the question I was going to bring up. When do people start their own traditions in their family systems? What do you think?
When you have the balls and the courage to do so. I mean, that's not it's not a very
it's not a time
Christian therapist. But it's a truth.
It's true. Yeah.
Like it's 100%. Like, so something that hit this year was, I mean, we moved into a house. We have Lorelai. There was all sorts of craziness when we moved in. And so going to my extended family's house for Thanksgiving, it started to feel like a burden. It started to feel like, I don't know, they're an hour and a half away. Do I like, and it's not that I don't love those people. I love those people to death, but we had to make the call. Like we're actually not coming over for Thanksgiving. We're going to have Thanksgiving at our house. We want to spend our first Thanksgiving in our home the first time. It's really important to us. And yeah, we invited over her parents. Her parents decided to come down to us, but we just sort of put the stake in the ground that I think for all of us to have more joy, it's going to be us being at our home.
Yeah.
And so that's where, I hope when you hear me say paint a picture, that's also when it says, what traditions do you want to bring in? Because maybe the breaking of the wishbone is not on your hit list.
We have to, yeah.
Well, no, what do we want to do? Because that is, like, I tell my older clients that I sit down with that are like transitioning in lifespan development, like at a certain point you have to get out of your kid's way so that your family can actually create that next generation. Because if you hold on and you're white knuckling this thing, they aren't learning anything. No. Like I'll never forget one of my clients. This was last year, but was bringing up like I've always done the turkey. And his son really wanted to do the turkey. His son had got a smoker, and I really wanted. His son had a young family, and it's like, it is his time for him to do the turkey.
Yeah.
Like you could just make the mashed potatoes and the stuffing and show up, let him do the turkey. Well, but that's always my thing. It's like, okay, so you're going to make your son wait till you die and then he'll cook his first turkey. Like,
what did your client say?
Well, he was like, well, like, you know me, I'm harsh with this stuff.
I'm the same
because
way.
Like, here's how I look at it. I would rather him cook the turkey, burn the turkey, and then have me there to help him. Versus him doing it when I'm not around.
That's so sweet. Exactly.
When he can't pick up the phone and call you, that's when you want him doing it for the first time? Like, no, that's when you have to realize you are no longer the primary voice, but you are a secondary voice.
Yeah.
You can be present for when he goes, Dad, I fucked up. I don't know what to do. How do we... Don't worry, I did the same thing.
I know I said I was going to smoke the bird. There are flames. So it's smoking, literally. What do I do? Yeah. But you brought up such a good point of making sure that when the traditions are passed down, it's when the person is still... When the person who is usually doing the tradition is still alive to pass the torch down, and ideally doesn't have like cognitive decline or concerns that would make it like impossible almost to pass it down. And it made me think of the tradition that my mom's parents, so my grandparents on my mom's side, about, because we're Polish on that side, it was potato pancakes, blintzes, and pierogies. And
oh, good stuff.
not everybody has had those, but there was one time on this school trip, and my friend Shane was like, "Pierogies! I love pierogies!" Because we went to Italy for this one school, and I was like, "You've had them before?" Like, not a lot of people have, or maybe they're called a different name. But my mom's mom made it a point to pass down to my dad, and my dad loves to cook. He went to culinary school, and that's now a tradition that my dad is able to uphold for my mom, and he makes it just as good, if not better, than I guess my Nana does. And that's something that they have my mom and dad have passed down to us. And it's more when we were younger that would be part of our Christmas Eve or Christmas morning. At the time it was like forced because we needed the extra hands. Now it's like, I want to do that. I want to learn those traditions because now I have a young family that I do want to have that. Maybe not be forced to do it every year, but I want to know how to do it, that when, God forbid, they pass on, I actually have that skill in my toolbox. And if I can't call, maybe I'll video it, or maybe I'll have the recipe written down.
Absolutely.
And like, the more I think about it in a positive way, it's like overwhelmingly emotional. Like, that's the warmth and joy that should come from the traditions being passed down. Is like, I know you really want to do the turkey, and I'm sorry I got in the way, that like, it's usually my thing. Really what's behind that is like, I'm facing my mortality, I'm facing my aging. Yeah, there's some like petulant child in that of like, but it's my thing. But deep down it's like, oh wow, I am that old that I have a kid old enough that it's going to be their thing now, and now my grandkids are going to be watching that, just like my son watched me. Like, being able to lean more into that side of the tradition and being passed down, I think can make it an easier time to still uphold it with reverence. But now it's like, it's our thing now. It's not just my thing. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, is you want to have your legacy like sort of unfold in front of you.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, you were always the one that was carving the turkey. You're doing this, but now you're going to play with your grandkids.
Right.
Now you're the conduit that helps your kids have these experiences, so they can sit back and say, "Oh, we did Christmas in our home for the first time." Like, but you won't have that if you're fighting for sort of the microphone in life. Like, if you have to make it your voice is being heard, it means you're silencing the rest of the voices in the room.
Yeah, and you don't want to force, like, it's not fun to have like a forced tradition. It's far more fun to have it be like, oh, that's that thing we do. And usually it's easier. I've noticed this. I'm curious if you feel that, when it's like you're newly dating somebody, or it's the in-laws or a good family friend that you get like adopted into the family, that like we usually think their traditions are cooler than our own traditions. Much like when you're younger and your friend's parents say something and you listen, versus when your own parents, like, it's the novelty side of it. And you can still enliven that tradition, or kind of take joy in that if it's your family that has a specific tradition, or you can voice to your family or your new, if you have a young family, what you want to start. It's like, oh, I always loved when the Colemans or whoever did this. Maybe we could try doing that this year. And you can always try it out. Sometimes you try something out and you're like, we're never, like the smoked turkey, we're never doing that again. But sometimes it's like, wow, this was so much better than when we cooked it in the oven. Let's do this. And sometimes new traditions are just a random new thing that happened to be because something else couldn't be, or they were out of something at the store, and like their new tradition is birth. So I would also voice, don't feel so pressured to like scrape all the old traditions and replace them all with new ones. Let it unfold naturally. Yeah.
I really like, no, we don't have to have hot dogs.
Cancel all of it. No. Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah.
But how, like you said, it's almost like these merciful accidents become new traditions. We had the same thing happen to us last year. We had the thought process, let's just throw like a dart at the country and have my wife and all of her sisters and her parents will meet somewhere. So we ended up meeting at Scottsdale and rented an Airbnb, and we're going to have a big family experience. And we're cooking the meal, and something happened where the bird ended up being bad. Like, I forget if it was like, because we got a lot of little hands in these, because I think we had like 9 kids. No.
Oh, wow.
We had 9 kids under the age of 12.
Oh.
And so what ended up happening was someone set the turkey to a wrong temperature. And so like halfway through the cook, we're like, this bird's cremated, right? Like, oh no, right?
Yeah.
It was literally like the Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You touch it and it just poof, right? Like it just disintegrates in front of you. And I remember like looking at all my sister-in-laws and my wife, and my wife is like, they're all panicked, right? And I was like, this isn't going to be a problem, because see, in my family, Christmas, the long-running joke was it was Chinese food. And so I was like, because they're like, where we can't find a turkey. It's late in the day. And they were all beat. And it's like, hold it. We got to make sides for all these people. And like, so we're calling a mulligan. So we called around, found a really good Chinese food place, ordered all the Chinese food. And I remember at the end of the night, we're throwing away all the styrofoam and all the stuff that came into it. And you have like the bodies of what was our previous Christmas meal. And people said like this was actually so much better than what we originally intended. So like the joke was like, are we going to continue it for Christmas this year? Like, and so we'll find out what it is. But again, it's one of those merciful accidents where it's like we have the ability to change it. It doesn't matter. I don't need to scream at anyone. No one needs to scream at me over why the bird's done. Let's just move into it's time for Chinese food. Like, so I think that's what I want to encourage you in is you're not stuck regardless of the situation. There's going to be the time that, hey, I feel bad for y'all, but there's going to be a moment where maybe on Christmas you're going to have to call and say, we've been in traffic for 3 hours. The kids are hungry. We're going to just go hit a place and then go home. We love you to death, but our car is falling apart. Like, if people can't meet you in that, that's for them. But you get to say, I know what's best for me and my family.
And that's our job, I think, when the torch gets passed to us, when we are the parents of our family. Now, like growing up, it was like we looked to our parents. Now we're the parents that our kids will be looking towards or looking to and looking up to. What traditions do I want to set is not the conflict on the holidays, is not the screaming car ride up, is not all the things that I would have rather done without, that when I could finally drive for myself was so relieved to be done. Those are not the traditions that I want to instill. In fact, it's let's be positive, let's be mindful, let's actually enjoy the morning, let's not feel rushed or stressed. And that might involve ruffling some feathers, but that's what you and I are very good at. That's why we have this podcast. And I have no shame about that because I can deliver it very kindly and in a way that is respectful to both the other person I'm setting the boundary with and to myself and to primarily my little family. And that's who matters the most to me because I'm going to hopefully be in her life for all of my life, and I'd like her to be close to me when she gets older, but I don't want her to feel forced. And if she ever is like, I want to go to so-and-so's house for Christmas, okay, like we can still do something else. You want to go catch a movie marathon? Like I want it to be feeling welcomed. And that's the vibe, is like, how can I put myself and my nervous system in a state of welcoming and receiving and going with the flow? As long as there's some semblance of a plan, and I know a Chinese restaurant is open, I'm okay. I'm good. And if I have my Prosecco, I'm fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your Beijing beef and Prosecco.
Yeah, that's all I need, really. Like I'm even thinking about this Christmas because I have her on Eve and then he has her on the day, that I don't need to spend the day with my nuclear family. I have a family friend that they're like kind of my adopted parents anyway. I want to go to their house for Christmas and, whatever they do, have breakfast and this and that. Again, if my own family did it, I'd be like, this is boring. But because they do it, I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. And it's nice to actually have a break around the holidays. I know that sounds kind of weird because my alternative was not getting along around the holidays. So getting along being a single parent is actually much better. I look forward to having the split holidays because I have more of my cup full than when I see her again, rather than spending the whole day running ragged in traffic and arguing. Like, I'm not saying maybe your solution is divorce if you're listening to this, but maybe your solution is not running around to all of your in-laws and getting in those fights. That's what I will. Divorce is on your own personal time if you choose that, but there is a benefit to not following those traditions. If it ends up causing so much fighting between you and your spouse that you want them to be your ex, you got to rework that. That's a new tradition. You need to not fight that much.
Is it really us, or is it the system that we're playing in? Now,
I'm pretty sure it's the system we're playing in.
Some people are slaves to their systems. They won't give them up, and that's why a divorce happens. That's why separation happens, because people will not give up their realities. But I've said it before, and the thing that like drives me in how we orient ourselves, whether it's in Christmas or holidays, spending time with families, I am fighting so that I am not experienced in a way I don't want to be experienced. So when I talk to a lot of my male clients and they talk about anger and frustration and rage, one of my first questions to them is, so when did you stop listening to yourself? Because
and betray yourself.
Once those emotions are coming out based off of a resentment of not allowing me to meet my own needs.
Yes.
Before I couldn't meet any needs. And so that's when, guess what? If I don't want to be here, I'm going to go ahead, let myself have the permission to leave. So I don't stay long enough that I say something that I resent.
I've been there. It's not worth it. Yeah. One of the best lines is from, I will leave listeners with this, the Getting the Love You Want by Harville and Helen Hendricks.
Okay.
And I'm going to butcher it, but essentially the key to a healthy, secure, functioning adult romantic, really friendship, but relationship is when the individual adult is able to divorce their family of origin and marry their spouse. Not literally divorce, but you have to learn to disappoint or separate from your family of origin and the system that you grew up in, and instead create a new system. And that's what you were saying just moments ago, that sometimes that doesn't happen, and that is what leads to divorce, because the person, instead of divorcing their family, they divorce the family. What is the line? Instead of divorcing the family that you came from, you end up divorcing the family that comes from you. That's something that I said on a podcast the other day that I remember I wrote down, because it's so true. You have to separate and individuate from your family of origin if you want a shot in hell at a healthy, secure, functioning marriage.
Leave and cleave.
Yes. And if you're the one who's done it and your partner hasn't, all the more reason to listen to this episode and our Thanksgiving episode of like, how can you gently or firmly encourage them? Like, look, this is for our best interest, and I actually maybe want to do you at the end of the night. So if you would like that to happen, here's what we have to follow, right? I'm a big fan of motivating any way you can, but that is really what's at stake. It's like, okay, great, your family, you and your mom are happy, but as your wife, I'm miserable. Was that really worth it? Like, no.
Exactly.
Yeah. So good luck, everyone. Now that you're, 2 days away from Christmas when this airs, let us know how you do.
Yeah, let us know how the dumpster fire goes.
Yeah, we're always here.
We'll talk to you soon, Trash Pandas.
We have a new year. Good luck.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Between Two Clinicians. We would so appreciate if this episode resonated with you, for you to share it with somebody, and also find your favorite podcast platform and like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. We would love to attract more listeners just like you and have this message be spread to whoever needs it. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.